We're back with Matias. Great. Matias, what is the awakening of consciousness? Well, in the first place, what is planetary consciousness? Well, the first thing we need to understand is the meaning of the word consciousness. Sometimes we talk about being conscious or about this or that, but we don't really know what consciousness means. Consciousness basically means to unite parts. Science, the word science, comes from scendere, which means to cut. People used to analyze things, cutting them to see what was there. So, science comes from dividing the parts in order to understand the whole, through all the different tiny parts. Consciousness is when I understand the logic between all those parts. When the parts are in coherence with each other, that is when you have consciousness. I could have a lot of things without understanding what they are until I analyze them one by one and understand the logic between them all. And what have you all been analyzing? What is it you've been doing? Planetary consciousness would be the understanding that the Earth is not just a rock that floats around and has living beings on top, but that every part of the Earth is like an organism, as if there are also cells, organs, the bloodstream. It's a living being in the whole planet. So analyzing what role each region, country, each nation has, we can understand a great biological symbiosis that allows to have a more integrated worldview rather than that of just people walking on top of it. When you start studying and seeing this, do many things that we might not have seen before start making sense? History starts making sense, the history of humanity, of biology, of evolution, why we have searched for certain social forms, why we have searched for certain religions. We start understanding our symbiosis with the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom. There starts to be a logic as to why cultures and languages exist. And how, so when we begin to understand the spiritual biology of the earth, the evolutionary process it is going through, this is called understanding consciousness, understanding how all those parts are part of a whole, which is going through an evolutionary process and how those parts help each other. Nowadays, we see all the separated parts, but actually, just as in a living organism, the heart helps the intestines help the brain, etc. So, very different things provide essential things to others. The way a body is autonomous and is able to work by itself, the earth is also a living being that is undergoing the same process. And we are actually imitating it. It's not that we are conscious beings and the earth is becoming conscious, but we are the result of what the earth is going through. Humanity has only been on this planet, the way we see it now, for 300,000 years. The earth has been going through this process for billions of years. And therefore, analyzing what the earth is, the places, how the structures of the earth, planets, functions, we can understand the map of our evolution, the map of where we're heading to as well. And where are we going with the awakening of consciousness in people? Where can we see it and notice it? How are we doing with it? If we talk about the planet, we are at a crucial moment for the history of the planet Earth, which is the fact that it is becoming self-aware. This started about 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. Self-awareness started when humans stopped walking the earth in order to survive, and at least 3 people on earth wondered, who am I? Who am I and why am I going where I am going? When they stopped migrating in order to search for food and started walking in order to find themselves. When did that happen? Approximately 20 to 25,000 years ago. There have been other moments, but as a culture, it started around 20 to 25,000 years ago. There was always an individual who realized, why do I do this? But around 20,000 years ago, it became culture, and that search took off. So we are going through a historical period that started 20, 25,000 years ago. It has been accelerating lately, though, right? It's accelerating because we are entering a historical process which is Aquarius. It's something that was talked a lot of in the 60s, the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius, the New Age, it was called, and now we're all in the same sack, on the same boat as in the 60s. But it basically has to do with the position of the physical North Pole in relation to a star. It's something very basic to do with the planetary movement, which relocates itself in different constellations, pointing to different constellations in its orbit around the Sun, as well as the rotation on its own axis. So from that position, the axis of the Earth points to a star or another throughout millions of years. So 200 years ago, we started entering what we call the aspect of Aquarius, the constellation of Aquarius, and we'll keep on entering. We still have 200 years until we're really in Aquarius. We're still in the process of transition between Pisces and Aquarius. So why does everything accelerate? On the one hand, because we are in a process of transition, and transitions are always strange and accelerated, and on the other hand, because Aquarius is an energy of constant transformation. You might not have adapted today, and tomorrow there's already a new thing. And we have to get used to this, because the next 2,500 years will be like this. It's only starting. Exactly. You were telling me about the role of each part of the planet, and even each country has its role. What is the role of Argentina in what is coming? We need to take into account that when I say Argentina, I'm not talking about Argentinians. It's fundamental to understand that. Sometimes we nationalize the earth, and those are ideas of ours, our culture, that place limits on territories. It's something that we made up in the last few centuries. Exactly. That's why I like to talk about Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, the country, the territory, and not about those who are on that territory. Those who are on the earth help through some processes or reflect certain processes that the earth is living. Argentina, together with Chile, is one of the two last countries that integrate what we call the tail of the planetary serpent, the backbone of the planet. The backbone starts in Turkey with the Atlas Mountains towards the North Pole, and it goes around all the highest mountains and tectonic plates in the Americas. And it finishes in Tierra del Fuego, which is the coccyx. And what does that mean? It means it is the point of regeneration. It's called the chakra of regeneration of the earth, the point from which something new can be created. The energy of the whole world is needed so that something new can be created. However, it's also a chaotic energy if it's disconnected, because it's a root chakra. Sexuality, control, power, it's hard to understand what's going on. We're all in the shadows, in the dark, in the roots. What did you say? It's chaotic if... Pardon? It's regeneration. It's a bit chaotic because if it's disconnected, this implies it has no logic as to where it should go. In order for Argentina to be able to generate, it cannot do without the consciousness of Peru and Bolivia. It needs to work in constant connection with Peru and Bolivia in terms of the consciousness that the Quechua and Aymara people have. All those people towards the north. They can give a sense to what the territory of Argentina generates, which has the power of activating the fire from Tierra del Fuego, what in spirituality is called Kundalini. It is lit in the land of Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire, which is the expansion from the coccyx. So all this territory is a territory of planetary regeneration, a territory in which something new can be created, something transcendental to the previous circuit. So all of us who are in Argentina have a great responsibility if we want to accept it. Yes, if we want to accept it, but in order to do that, we have to know how to move that energy. And therefore, the nation should be correctly aligned with the territory. What do you mean by nation? The government? No, not at all. Society? A nation is everything that is nato, innate. Everything that is born here. So we would have to be aligned to the purpose, right? Exactly, yes. So that can be gradually done. Yes, it's an educational construction that could take decades, but it can be done. Now we're going to delve into Ontocracy and what you have to offer. We're back with Matías De Stefano. Mati, in all this evolution we're going through as human beings, is it true that democracy seems to be outdated and there can be something new, innovative? The idea of Ontocracy, what is it? How can it be applied? Well, to start with, what is Ontocracy? Well, obviously, throughout the development of cultures and societies, we as human beings have established government systems to establish order among people. The more people there were, the more order was needed. And then new structures were born. All the structures that have been talked about and were established since Socrates, Plato, and so on, are structures that forgot about something fundamental, which was the best system ever created on Earth, which wasn't created by a human, but the Earth herself, biology. Biology is the only system that does not fail and adapts itself to the needs of the environment, because up till now the systems were there to bring order, as if they had to put us in order. Exactly. Bring order to something that is chaotic from the outside, and that is a vision of the gods, a vision of divinity, of I am someone perfect that controls and gives a law to someone who is imperfect. So everything that is imperfect must follow the laws of perfection. But the question is, who establishes what perfect means? Who channels that? So there is obviously going to be ideologies. So what I think that God is, who tells me I'm perfect, I will download that according to some laws and rules, which are called morality. And morality means that which inhabits a place. Moral, it's a place. So moral cannot be worldwide. It can only be local. It has to do with how one culture lives in that place. It cannot be extended to something planetary. It did through Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. It spread itself. But all the cultures talked about local things. Judaism talked about what was happening in the Middle East. You cannot apply that to the Amazon rainforest. There are different contexts. So that morality started building the idea of societies, people governed by ideas of what perfection could be, and that we were controlled by someone. Yes, by a need. I'm not in favor of judging and saying someone controls us. I believe that control, power, hierarchy were necessary systems during a time of unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is not bad, it's useful for the development of things. However, when we need to start rethinking a new system, unconsciousness is not useful. It's useful just when we are producing, but not when we are creating. When we are creators of our own reality, we need to be conscious. Once we create it and we're working with it, we can be unconscious. The energy enables that. In this territory, in Argentina, if we are responsible because of the role we have, we are required to create and be conscious. You were just telling me about how Ontocracy comes from, you were telling me about biology. Biology, yes. Biology is the best system ever created in the evolution of this planet, beyond humans, because it governs itself. It has its own economy. There is no leader, no ruler in biology. However, it works. There's no ruler in the body. We often say it's the brain, but the truth is the intestines often rule the brain. We don't realize, but I'm not telling... No, the intestine knows what it has to do. The gallbladder knows what it has to do. It knows which nutrients it has to take in and not. After millions of years of evolution, the body discovered its own potential. And the cells discovered that they don't have to imitate others, they have to be themselves. So they occupy the place they are meant to. When I occupy the place I'm meant to because of my infinite wisdom, that is the moment when I can be part of an organism, which is an organ, which is part of a whole that was born, a nation, which governs itself. You are comparing cells to individuals, to people, yes. It's as if each human was like a neuron within planet Earth. Planet Earth is going through childhood development. It's as if it was generating a lot of options, like a child that discovers many games. We need to generate a lot of neurons in order to generate a lot of synapses, and therefore a lot of new ideas that allow us to understand ourselves. That's why there are many religions, many languages, many cultures, many countries. We are in a moment of expansion of millions of neurons on planet Earth because the planet needs to understand each one of her corners. She is in the process of becoming conscious. So Ontocracy is the power of that being that becomes self-aware. Ontos means being and kratos means power. The power of the being is the being that can manage, govern himself or herself. What happens with democracy? Democracy, like all other systems, was useful in times in which something fundamental was missing, which was the second thing the Greeks had yet to understand in order to determine powers. It's called the internet. It's the first time in history of humanity that all the individuals, conscious or unconscious, have access and power. It's the first time that just anyone can create a change. It's the first time that anyone can share. It's the first time we can, and it's the first time we can all vote for a law. We can choose somebody from home. So what you're saying about Autocracy, create a project that is funded by others and carry it out. So the government is no longer needed. We can be self-sufficient. We can be self-sufficient, but what is missing? Consciousness. Because education never taught us to discern and govern ourselves. It only taught us ABC, 1 + 1 is 2, and it never got us ready for... Exactly. So if education is transformed, it ceases to be outwards and starts being inwards. So at the age of 7, an individual should be able to manage all their emotions. Nowadays, we're trying to do it at the age of 50 to see if we can solve a problem with our son, our father, when that should already be solved at the age of 5. 50-year-olds, they don't need coaching. It's the 5-year-olds that need coaching. Too late at the age of 50, right? You're late, but it's all good. What I mean is, your cells already have many preconceptions, and a lot of preconceptions need to be broken in order to transform something, but someone under the age of 7. But that's why the powers always try to target in childhood, either not giving them good education or regulating education with content, this and that. The first 7 years of one's life determine the next 70. Wow, amazing. Why? Because it's when all the synaptic connections that allow you to understand your environment, the world, takes place. So everything that happens to you during those 7 years is equivalent to 7,000 years for humanity. 7 years becomes 7,000. We're going through that process of assimilating a lot of data and information that can help us give a quantum leap in consciousness in this new time. But if we carry on living with the same patterns and so on, when we get to planetary adolescence, we're going to end up having worse conflicts than the ones we're having now. So we need to turn inwards again. Inwards, but that is education. But going back to the topic of ontocracy, in order to fully understand those concepts of biology, for each cell to be self-sufficient, the body knows, the cell knows what it needs to digest or get rid of out of what we ingest, what the other needs. It self-regulates. But could it be that we're still not ready to self-regulate? But that comes from education, from gaining awareness, which is not the same as teaching. It's exact opposite. What is the difference? To teach means to point out something. This is true, that is not true. That is to teach. To educate means to bring what is inside towards the outside. Educo. We think that a child needs to absorb the richness from the outside, when the richest are most infinite things might be inside the child. Exactly. Imagination. If one wants to create an infinite humanity with millions of possibilities, the last thing that should be done is show the past results. What we need to do is turn to imagination. Only in the imagination can project the future. The past can only show you already established possibilities. Fantastic, Matias. So, who can fix this? Not politicians, but children under 7. But they're in kindergarten. And somehow on a predetermined path. A path that is being predetermined and kills their inner richness. Because we always have adults saying, you shouldn't do this, you should do this, don't say this, don't do that, that's not true, you need to do your homework. Those things that one might think are basic education are actually killing education. Matias, we're going to carry on talking about ontocracy in the next show. What we've touched on is great, without resisting anything, without rejecting what we have created so far, accepting what we created as it's what we were able to do. My